Welcome everyone to Breaking Big Blue. I'm your host Jordan Ron on ESPN, ESPN.com. Giants reporter, and we're here with the draft breakdown episode. The draft that everybody thinks the Giants killed. And you'll put me on that list. I think the Giants did very well in this draft. If I had to give a grade, I would give them an A. What do draft grades mean? Absolutely nothing. The draft is so unpredictable. We never know how it ultimately plays out. The reality is more than half these players end up not being significant impact guys in the league. That's just the reality of the draft, but it's always fun. And that's why we're here. We're here to talk about it, break it down. In a draft where the Giants got their blue chip generational type player, I hate saying generational. So let's just call it blue chip in Abdul Carter, right? He's a blue chip player. He was that highly regarded, right? He goes 3. They get back into the bottom first round. They take Jaxson Dart. Brian Daboll's quarterback of choice. Giants fell in love with him throughout the process. And I thought it was very interesting. When Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll called Jaxson Dart after he got drafted, they both said, you dominated the process, killed the process, whatever the exact wording was. He dominated the process, right? And we're talking about from the end of the season in January until the draft in late April. That, it seems, where the differentiator was between Jaxson Dart, Ole Miss quarterback, talented guy. I spoke to someone, probably, it was before the combine. And they told me, said, probably like a second round type pick. But because of what we're in regards to talent, but because quarterbacks always get pushed up, will probably get pushed into the first. So, gets pushed into the first. Giants get him, only give up a third round pick this year and a third round pick next year, which, in the grand scheme of things, not a huge price to pay. Because think about it, Adam Schefter, this is kind of one of the most under-the-radar things that flew under the radar throughout draft weekend. Adam Schefter reported there was a time when the Giants made a big offer to the Tennessee Titans for the number 1 overall pick, obviously Cam Ward in this case. And their offer included their first-round pick this year, right, number 3 overall, and their first-round pick next year, and other picks. So that's a monster deal. So it's clear the Giants thought there was a quarterback better. The number 1 quarterback was going to be Cam Ward. After him, Jaxson Dart, Shedeur Sanders. We saw Shedeur Sanders plummet, obviously. There was a lot of talk, and I've heard this over the past few weeks, that there was a meeting that didn't go great between Brian Daboll and Shedeur Sanders to the point where they absolutely wouldn't draft him. I'm not sure that's the case. I don't think that was the case. It was to the point where they were absolutely saying no chance, 0 chance. Now, were they going to draft him at 3 overall? No chance. But would they have drafted him if they didn't get Jaxson Dart and Shedeur Sanders was there in the second round? I think there's a good chance that they would have. But it definitely, the way Jaxson Dart handled the process. And again, something that was mentioned to me, the second he was going to be able to go into the process and talk football people, they would be like, that's the kind of guy that I want to work with, right? There's enough talent there. He loves football enough. He's going to work hard enough. You know what? I could see this guy turning into a high-level quarterback. And that's where we stand. Giants now have their quarterback of the future. And let's be fair. They were always going to take a quarterback of the future given the position that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are in. We said this from the start. I told you this months ago. The second they rolled it back with Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, they had to get a quarterback. Now, they made the decision not to take 1 and 3 because Abdul Carter is that good. Let me read you some of the things that people around the league told me on. Elite talent. High ceiling. Low floor. Elite lower body flex. Game-changing ability because of pass rush prowess. Now, I asked somebody about the comparison between him and Micah Parsons, and they said not quite as strong as Parsons. So he has that explosiveness, and some of the comps that a couple people gave me was actually Von Miller. And when you're being compared to Von Miller, you're talking about a multi-time All-Pro. That's really good. Like, that's the kind of player that people think Abdul Carter is going to be. Now it'll be very interesting to see how they use him. He did play linebacker his first 2 years at Penn State. He went to James Franklin, said, hey, what do you think about me going to edge rusher? This past year, they thought it was best for the team, for him individually. Turned out right. So now Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Abdul Carter. A lot of pressure on Shane Bowen. We'll get to that over the next few months to make it work. Find places to get Abdul Carter in. Almost in like a joker spot. Move him around. He could be on the inside. He could be lined up over the A gap as a blitzer. Edge, interior rusher, anywhere you could find him. He has the athleticism, the ability to turn his hips where you can use him in coverage in the middle of the field sometimes. Explosive and super productive. One person thought his effort at time was inconsistent, but he's just such an unbelievable athlete that you can't miss. He's going to be a high-end pass rusher, 10 to 12 sacks every single year starting his rookie year. At least, I'm saying. Can grow into more than that, but even as a rookie, should be a 10 to 12 sack guy. That's how good, that's how talented he is. So you have to take that guy. Now, I'll say this. I had heard on the morning of the draft, Giants were interested in moving up to get a quarterback at the back end of round one. Target was Jaxson Dart. We kind of knew that the week or so before leading into the draft. That was their guy. That was Brian Daboll's quarterback of choice. Proved to be true. And going into that day, what I had heard was they're looking to trade up their their second round pick, number 34 overall, and their third round pick, which was number 99. They didn't want to trade. They had the first pick of the third round, 64. And they held firm on that, right? They didn't want to trade 64. Instead, they ended up trading 99 and throwing in a future third. So, which, by the way, is like giving up a second-round pick this year. Give up a second-round pick this year, it has one less value next year. That's like a third-round pick next year. Or did I do that backwards? You get the point. Picks lose a round of value every year. So next year's third-round pick isn't quite as valuable as this year's third-round pick. But that was the plan. And they held firm to it. They got their quarterback. Didn't give up their first third-round pick. They gave up their second third-round pick. Now, they'll be short a third-round pick next year. But when you talk about it from a value perspective, it's not a huge price to pay if you land your franchise quarterback. Now, we don't know if he's the guy. But I did speak to someone today around the league, an executive with another team, and he actually really liked Jaxson Dart. To the point where he told me he was the best quarterback in a bad QB class, meaning that he actually wasn't in love with Cam Ward either. And so these opinions exist. Now, most people, let's be fair, that I've talked to, 9 out of 10, said that Cam Ward was the guy in this draft. But there was a lot of people that wanted to take a shot on Jaxson Dart, that liked Jaxson Dart. And from what I heard was that the Giants and Browns were the two teams that were interested in getting Jaxson Dart, potentially moving up to the bottom end of the first round, early in the second round, right around there, late in that day one, early day two range. Giants and Browns, not the Saints. I did not hear the Saints. I heard the Saints all along, like Tyler Shuck, who they draft Tyler Shuck. Now, I know some people have said the Rams were looking for a quarterback too. That's just not true. I've talked to people about that around the league. Not true. The Rams were not trading up or looking to draft a quarterback with that next pick after the Giants at pick 26. That wasn't the case. They took a first-round pick, future first-round pick, to move down. But it wasn't because they were targeting Jaxson Dart, because that's just really good value, right? Heck, they just got a first-round pick next year and was supposed to be a really strong quarterback draft next year. And remember, they don't know their future of Matthew Stafford. But still, the Browns were the other team that I heard was a threat for Jaxson Dart all throughout that day. Draft day, last Thursday. Now, it wasn't just that. If the draft ended there, I think people would be happy. You got a super high-end edge rusher, Giants getting an identity, getting back to the fact, old Giants, how did they win in 86 and 90, in 2007 and 2011, is they had a strong defense, specifically a pass rush that would get after you. Relentless. Well, now you see, this is a front seven with the 3 edge rushers that I named before, Abdul Carter joining Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence in the middle. But it's not just that. One of the biggest problems was that the Giants had Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence last season. They had nothing else. Nothing on the interior of their defensive line. And we said it going into the season. I was like, man, that might have been, to me, one of my number one concerns going into the season. Aside from quarterback, obviously. Tight end position I thought was really weak as well. But that depth on the interior, like you can't play with just 3 guys. You can't have all those guys playing 90+% of the snaps and then hope they're staying healthy. And what happened? 2 of the 3 guys got injured, missed a huge chunk of games, Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon Thibodeau. And by the way, Brian Burns was injured maybe more than the 2 of them. And he had to play through it the whole season. So you need to have depth. You need 10 guys basically on your defensive line. You can just rotate them in. Now, you want Brian Burns and you want Abdul Carter and you want Dexter Lawrence. You want them playing large percentages of the snaps. But those guys still need to come out of games. That's how that's how this league works. Think about the advantage you get when those guys are fresh against offensive linemen who have to play every single snap. Especially when they're not good. You have a crappy offensive lineman who's on his 50th snap of the game playing against a defensive tackle who just got 5 snaps of rest. Plus, the offense was on the field. Who has an advantage there? Huge advantage to the defense. And to add to that defensive line, in the 3rd round, pick number 64, the one that we said the Giants were intent on keeping, they landed Darius Alexander, defensive tackle out of Toledo, who, by all accounts, from everyone I talked to, thinks it was a really good pick. Awesome pick. High upside. Great pick. Really like him. I mean, those are some of the comments, feedback from people around the league that sent to me when the Giants drafted Darius Alexander, who, by the way, crushed the Senior Bowl. Obviously, a huge moment for him coming from Toledo. Did really well at the Senior Bowl. And people think he could be a really good player, a bona fide starter in the league, like a solid, quality defensive tackle. And you add that to Dexter Lawrence, and the edge rushers that I named before, now you got something. And then you have depth. You have Rakeem Nunez-Roches, proven NFL player, good rotational player. You signed Jeremiah Ledbetter, run stuffer. You signed Roy Robertson-Harris, proven NFL player. Right? Now you have something. You're not forcing Chapman. I'm drawing a blank on his first name right now. But he was an undrafted free agent last year. Right? And he was forced into a starting role. Elijah. You were starting Elijah Chapman. It took me a minute to remember his first name. They were starting an undrafted rookie free agent who, by the way, is extremely undersized. Yes, it's a great story. He's a quality guy. He's a quality player. He's going to play in the league. But you don't want him starting as an undrafted free agent rookie and playing a huge role. You want him to be a bit player. You want him to be part of the rotation. And now that's where he could sort of fit in this year. Elijah Chapman. Got his name. There we go. So now everyone can kind of fit into the role they're being. Ditto Nacho, Rakeem Nunez-Roches. Like having him as a rotational player, a guy who plays, 30, 40, 50% of the snaps, rather than a guy you need to start next to Dexter Lawrence and play 60% of the snaps. Huge difference. Huge difference, if you ask me. Have him part of a rotation. Have him play 50% of the snaps. Much better in that role. He'll be better in that role. The Giants will be much better for having him in that role. Then the pick that has everybody hyped up. I went to a golf outing Monday, 2 days after the draft ended, and one of the most common comments to me was, "Oh, Cam Scatterwood, gonna love him. Gonna be a fan favorite." One of those old school type running backs. I'm gonna run you over, then run around you. Arizona State was absolutely unbelievable for Arizona State this past year, and surprisingly good catching the ball. I don't think people realize he actually catches the ball really well. Now, we'll see ultimately if you can survive with that kind of approach in the NFL. Like, it's a lot easier running over Big 12 cornerbacks than it is to try and run over NFL linebackers, clearly. But he does have athleticism. He does have ability. And I like the Cam Scatterbo pick, too. I thought, for the power runners that they were looking for, that to me, he was the option that stood out. In part because I like the approach, physical, tough. But I also like the idea he catches the ball really well. People are going to be very surprised. Remember I said that. Cam Scatterbo as a receiver. Going to hear about that moving forward a little bit. So now you got those 4 picks. Now, it's hard to complain. I don't know how you can come away from those 4 picks and saying, I don't like the Giants draft. And we'll get to the final 3 picks after that. Marcus Bowe was their 5th rounder. A lot of people thought kind of highly of him. I've heard mixed reviews on him. Crafty, good hands. Some question his play strength, but it has heavy hands, somebody said. Practices snaps, I wrote down here. So he actually says he has 5 position flexibility. Shorter arms, and the Giants' plan is to actually start him at tackle, which is kind of interesting. Medical maybe perhaps was a little bit why he fell and was available in the 5th round when people thought he was going to go a little bit earlier. Also, analytically did not rate out great. 2.7 pressure percentage. You kind of want it to be less than 2%, so he did not grade out well in that regard. Tackles are basically less than 2%. You're getting like the mid 1%. That's like elite. So he's in the high 2%, which wasn't great. All these things, he's a 5th round pick. He has a chance to be a contributor. Maybe he could develop into a starter. Obviously, the Giants don't plan on him being a starter this year because they're going to start him out at tackle. Their starting tackles are Jermaine Illuminor and Andrew Thomas. Those are their 2 starting tackles. So post-draft, as we look at it right now, their starting guards, again, Greg Van Roten and John Runyon. With the interior, with the center being John Michael Schmidt. That's the intention for the starting 5 Giants offensive line. Run it back one more time. We'll see what Evan Neal can do. They wouldn't fully commit to him playing guard, but they said he's going to have flexibility, which obviously means he's going to play guard. Plus, I told you months ago at this point that they were going to move him to guard. So he'll get a shot. He'll get a look there. They'll still keep him probably at tackle a little bit, but they'll give him a look there. You have Josh Zudu at guard too. Maybe 1 or 2 of them can impress this summer. But the likelihood is your starting 5 offensive line for the Giants after free agency and the draft is going to be the exact same as last year. Now, they were okay early last year before everyone got injured, before Andrew Thomas got injured. They were okay, which for the Giants is an upgrade because they had been bad. So they were probably slightly above average the first 5 weeks or so of the season when everybody was healthy and playing. So that's the line they're hoping. Continuity, another year together. When you're together and you have time together, you can build on stuff. You can get better. I think that's the hope there. Giants' final 2 picks. Let's go over them real quick. Thomas Fidone, tight end, Nebraska, was a huge recruit coming out. Actually, ahead of Brock Bowers. 2 back-to-back knee injuries. Wasn't quite the same after. I think you're hoping if he could become a functional 3rd tight end blocker, that's what you get in Thomas Fidone. Anything above that would be a huge win. Corey Black, Oklahoma State, speedster, 4.35, going to play some special teams. Guy who entered college at 160, put on some weight while he was there, Oklahoma State. Now you got a guy, okay, try to make something out of this guy who's a speedster, and maybe we can get some, a guy who's a depth cornerback. Anything more than that, again, would be a complete win. But now we're looking at it as in totality. 7 players drafted by the Giants. Abdul Carter, dominant edge rusher. Jaxson Dart, your lottery ticket quarterback. You damn better well hope that that's the guy, but there's some traits to bet on. There's a good person, individual to bet on, work habits, etc. Darius Alexander, defensive tackle, starting defensive tackle eventually, maybe not this year, but eventually will be part of the mix as a rookie. I tried to hold that in with all my might. Couldn't do it. Allergies, killer. Pollen, out of control these days. Cam Scatterbo, your bruising running back, your Mike Allstott type guy. throwback kind of guy at running back. Add a physicality to this team. Marcus Bowe, okay. Offensive lineman, maybe can grow into a starter. Thomas Fedoni, Corey Black. Giants 2025 draft class. Mel Kiper gave it an A-. I give it an A. Again, what does that mean? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. You never know. You never know which of these quarterbacks is going to be great, which of them aren't going to pan out. But in a year where it wasn't a great quarterback draft. That's the bottom line. In a year it wasn't a great quarterback draft, generally most of them don't pan out to be super high-end starters. Now, if somehow Jaxson Dart does pan out, ends up being a top 10 type quarterback, A-plus draft. If he ends up being a dud, a flameout, isn't a starting quarterback in the league, more like a backup, it's not going to be an A draft. It's not going to be an A- draft. Probably going to end up being a C draft. So we'll wait and see. Now, yeah, I guess it could be higher than that, even if he doesn't pan out. If Abdul Carter is an all-pro and Darius Alexander is a good quality starter and Cam Scatamo is a really good player and makes a Pro Bowl or two, right? But we'll see. So there's various ways this could play out. The bottom line is the Giants executed a plan, did it rather successfully, didn't give up any crazy amount of assets, future resources, a third-round pick, okay. You took a shot on a quarterback in the draft, which at some point this regime is going to have to take a shot on a quarterback in the draft. It's Brian Daboll's guy. Pressure's on now. Produce. Now, let's talk about the Shane Daboll dynamic for a second. Okay? A lot of people say they're going to have to play him. You have to show, what he could do. I actually disagree with that. The Giants have already made it clear Russell Wilson's going to be the starter. They've said he's going to be the starter in the spring. There's nothing that he's not going to lose the job, in the spring or summer. Something would have to happen. Like he would have to get banged up. Sort of like what happened in Pittsburgh last year. Russell Wilson signed. They intended him to be the starter. He got banged up. Justin Fields ended up starting. Eventually, Russell Wilson became the starter. Jameis Winston's the next quarterback in line. Jaxson Dart's going to be the third-string quarterback. Tommy DeVito is kind of in trouble here. Looks like he's going to be the odd man out. Not going to get a real shake. Tough break for him. Remember, last year, they said, this guy can give us a boost, a jump. And now, how many months later is that? That was November. So 6 months later, they're like, he's our fourth quarterback. Who knows if we're even going to keep him. Quite a jump. Change of opinion. Flip-flop. But the bottom line with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll is this. Their best selling point now is that, look, we got our quarterback of the future. You can watch him throw and run and, work behind the scenes inside the facility and in practice and training camp. And it's almost better if they don't put him out there and show him he doesn't take his lumps. Because then they can say, look, we already invested a year. Let's say they go 6-11. We already invested a year in developing Jaxson Dart. Let us see our plan to fruition. Wait till you see it on the field. So to me, this buys them time. And it doesn't need for him to play immediately and to play soon. It's almost like the element of the unknown is better for them here. So they can take their dandy old time. Now, I'll be curious to see when Brian Daboll gets frustrated with Russell Wilson and gets frustrated with Jameis Winston, if at some point he's like, I just want to give Jaxson Dart a turn. Let's give it a try. I think he's better than them anyway. We might get there. I think there's a shot we get there, but I don't think we will get there at least until it's really, really late in the season. Now, if they're 2-10, then, hey, their last ditch Hail Mary at that point will be to put Jaxson Dart in. But if you can at least survive this season, the first half of the season, throughout this season, in what's going to be a very difficult schedule. When people are done calculating strength of schedule, the Giants' strength of schedule is going to be there in the top 5 hardest. It might be the hardest strength of schedule. You look at the divisions they play now. We're going to get to that in a few weeks. The schedule is going to come out in a couple weeks. So we'll get to that in a few weeks. But to me, the likelihood is we don't see Jaxson Dart much, if at all, this season. And I say that in part because Joe Schoen said he's in a good situation where he can sit and learn. And I followed that up with the question when he said, you're talking about sitting and learning. Are you fine with him doing that all year? And as I'm asking the question, Joe Schoen was kind of nodding, as if he was about to say yes and give his explanation, full explanation. And, you could see the reasoning. Look at the success that the Green Bay Packers have had with it, right? Look at the success that the Kansas City Chiefs have with it. I know Patrick Mahomes played his rookie year. It was week 17 or 18, whatever it was. I don't think there was 18 games at that time. It was 17. So he came in the last game, played one game, one completely meaningless game. Didn't mean anything. So he basically got redshirted his rookie year. I think that there's a good chance Jaxson Dart gets redshirted his rookie year here. Now, it wasn't the same for Josh Allen in Buffalo. If I remember correctly, could be wrong, I'll have to look this up later, but Josh Allen did get in early, and they moved on from Tyrod Taylor, but I thought they moved on from Tyrod Taylor after the previous year. I'll look into that, but I don't know. Not positive off the top of my head. But anyway, I think in this situation, for them, the situation that the Giants are in, they might wait with Jaxson Dart, especially when they signed Russell Wilson. They didn't sign Russell Wilson and with the intention of him being benched early. This isn't the same as Kurt Warner, because if you remember what happened with Kurt Warner, okay, and you're talking Kurt Warner, Eli Manning, how did that all play out? The Giants, they were 5-4, still kind of had a chance for the playoffs. Number one, Eli Manning was the number one overall pick. Okay, different story. Jaxson Dart is the bottom half of the round one pick. He's pick number 25. He's not the prospect that Eli Manning was. Not even close. So at the time, remember, the Giants still had Kerry Collins on the team when they drafted Eli Manning. They didn't draft Eli Manning. They traded for Eli Manning. Semantics separate. When they got Eli Manning in that 2004 NFL draft, they had Kurt Warner on the roster. They had Kerry Collins on the roster. He asked for his release when they got Eli Manning. So when Eli Manning came, he asked for his release. Kurt Warner wasn't then signed until, I believe it was July. So sometime that summer. So it's different. They signed Russell Wilson in free agency, essentially telling him, we're going to give you the chance to be the starter. Kurt Warner wasn't given any crazy assurances when he signed with the Giants. He knew he was signing with the Giants, and number one pick was there waiting in the wings. That's not the same circumstances that Russell Wilson signed with the Giants. He signed with the Giants knowing that they were going to bring in Jameis Winston alongside him, or another veteran alongside him, because actually Jameis Winston was signed before Russell Wilson. So that's actually the way it all played out. But he was brought here with the intention of being the starter, thinking he would get a chance to be the starter, and he would have an opportunity, if he played well, to remain the starter, be the starter for who knows how long. Now, Jaxson Dart is now waiting in the wings. Russell Wilson's here likely for a 1-year respite. And remember, he's only on a 1-year deal anyway. And he's going to see if he can resuscitate his career. And at the same time, it fits the two narratives we've been talking about for months now. Win as many games as possible, as Joe Schoen and Brian Dable are doing, while also making sure you have your quarterback of the future. Because if they went 5-12, 6-11, and they still didn't have a quarterback of the future on the roster, their jobs would probably not exist. It would be a really tough sell for them. Now, in my opinion, they have the sales pitch of, hey, we've already invested a year in Jaxson Dart. We're in the middle of a developmental program. Do you really want to start over? Do we really want to do what you did to Daniel Jones all over again? Remember, John Mara came out and said, we screwed that kid up in every way we possibly could because they kept changing coordinators and changing coaches on him. Okay. That's their pitch. That's their path to getting more time. Because everybody knows this isn't going to be the year for the Giants. Likely. They need a miracle. Super hard schedule. Still building. Roster, certainly better. Seth Walder, who I respect immensely, at ESPN. I'm sorry, it wasn't Seth Walder. Mike Clay, who I respect immensely, does the roster rankings every year. Last year, he said their Giants roster was the 32nd ranked roster in the league. People got on him. People got on me. Guess what? Their Giants roster was bad last year. If he wasn't right, he was off by one spot. The roster was not good enough. It was insufficient. Now, the roster's still not great. It still has holes. He has them up to 24, I saw the other day. So they are making progress. It's slow. And yes, the expectations are so low, but just win some games. On this side, the first thing they have to do is win games. Right? And that's play Russell Wilson, play good defense, try to win some games. And the other side is develop the young quarterback. So now you have two paths. And now the hope is that they can merge, win some more games, and you develop your quarterback. Now you have something you can legitimately tell ownership, we are headed in the right direction. Whereas anything else, anything otherwise, to me, unless they won 10, 11, 12 games without the quarterback, was going to be impossible to sit there and say there's a real path for them to keeping their jobs. Because you win 5, 6 games, you're on a 3-year stretch where you went 6-11, 3-14, 6-11 again, and you're going to keep your job in the NFL, and you don't have a quarterback of the future. That's how we end up here. So maybe if you want to really nitpick the draft, you say, I really would have rather them keep building the roster. Use those extra picks they could have had this year. 2 more picks, round 2. What was it? Early and round 4. No, back end of round 3, number 99. Have those picks, keep adding. Get back to quarterback next year. That's fine. I get that. But given how everything was set up going into the draft, and that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are here, that just wasn't realistic. It just wasn't. Last thing I just want to touch on real quick, and I spoke to LT over the weekend, and he had a conversation with Abdul Carter, who basically wanted to wear number 56. Terrible idea, in my opinion. Just putting way too much pressure on you. You're upsetting part of the fan base. The older part of the fan base, and I'm stereotyping, I understand, but I think I have a decent feel. For the most part, not everybody, but the older part of the fan base, and even some of the younger, you hold Lawrence Taylor to a certain level. You dream about, and we're talking strictly from a playing perspective. When you think of Lawrence Taylor, Giants fans think greatest, and most people do, I think, greatest defensive player of all time. When you think of 56, you think of Lawrence Taylor running around the field, coming around the back, sacking the quarterback, and doing the old, hammer, axe, strip sack from behind kind of thing. Like, that's what you think of when you think of Lawrence Taylor. And I don't think, for the most part, especially the older part of the fan base that saw Lawrence Taylor play, that saw Lawrence Taylor dominate, wanted Abdul Carter or anybody. It's nothing to do with Abdul Carter even. They don't want to see anyone else running around with the 56. And it would bother people. And naturally, Abdul Carter, no matter what he did, even if he was awesome, even if he was an all-pro, when he missed the play, there'd be a segment of the population that would be like, he's not LT. You don't need that. It's a ridiculous expectation to put on yourself. And I get it. You want to be great. And what LT told him, and it was relayed to me, was that, hey, go get your own number. Nothing personal, but he just thought it was a better idea. Go get your own number. Create your own legacy. Make number, picking a random number. Make number 99. I have no idea what number he's going to be because the other number he wore in college was 11. And you don't want him to take Phil Simms' number either. Is go take number 99, pick the random number, and make it yours, right? So this way, 20 years from now, they'll think the same about 99 as they think about 56. And when they think about 99, the fans, they won't want to see anybody else wearing number 99 except for Micah Parsons. That's it. Oh, sorry, I called him Micah Parsons. Abdul Carter. Sorry about that. Slip. That they want to see anybody else wearing whatever number he chooses other than Abdul Carter. And Lawrence Taylor told him, hey, I'm a fan of yours. I want you to succeed. If you need anything, I'm here to help. He was completely supportive. Just thought it wasn't a great idea to wear number 56. And I don't know how you disagree with that. Go create your own legacy. Exactly as it should be in this case. So that's case closed. Move on from that. On to the next one.